So, Greg, thank you for indulging me because I love this story. There was a recent panel of women that I fangirl over, and they spoke at the FAIR conference on Friday about the lived experience of Latter-day Saint women. And one of the things that stood out to me is really the women that they had in this panel. So BYU professor Barbara Morgan Gardner was the moderator. I listened to a podcast, well, more than one podcast actually, that she does on a regular basis. Sara Weaver, the Deseret News editor, who will be joining us in studio in just a minute, she was there. BYU Marriott School, the dean of the Marriott School, Bridget Madrian, she was there. A BYU professor, Jenna Erickson, who actually lives in my neighborhood, and BYU law professor Shima Bauman. And she is just so interesting. The whole panel was so interesting to talk about the way women can really embrace their full self as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
What is FAIR? FAIR.
That is a really good question.
Sorry, I put you on the spot.
No. I do have to look it up though. It stands for maybe Sarah knows right here. Let's see. What does FAIR stand for, Sarah?
It stands for Faithful Answers.
Inspired something. I don't know.
Okay.
Let me look it up. Look it up.
My bad question.
No, it's a good question, and I should have been ready.
But we are joined this morning by Sara Weaver, editor of the Deseret News and former editor of the Church News, who was on the panel and attended with several other people. Sara, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell me, so first of all, when I read the story, I was like, oh my gosh, I am so sad I didn't know about this ahead of time because I totally would have attended that panel specifically. But what stood out to you on the panel?
I actually think it's amazing when you have a group of women who are willing to take their faith into the public square. And that's not just for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but that's for anyone who says, this is something that has been important in my life, that has defined who I am, that has helped me make decisions, and now I want to take it to the public and share with others what it means to me. And so for me, that's what that was. It was an opportunity to say, this is important to me. And I hope that everyone, regardless of their faith tradition, or if they have no faith tradition, feels like they can take the things that mean the most to them, the things that are their inner convictions, into the public square and share them and be their whole self in public.
Mm-hmm. I have an answer for you, Greg. It's faithful answers, informed response. FAIR.
So, Sara, I have a question. I mean, this seems like something that should have been done previously. I mean, what brought everyone together and why now to address this?
Well, historically, the FAIR conference has addressed questions that are important to members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I think in recent years, what it means to be a woman in the church has been something that a lot of people are talking about. And so they put together a panel of women who feel like their faith has defined who they are. And so that's what that was, and that's why it mattered to me.
So Sara, I wonder if you could share an experience that you had in Fiji in 2016.
So, and this was part of this conference, but I went to Fiji as a reporter for the Church News of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and as part of that trip, was there to cover the rededication of the Nukulov of the Fiji temple, and the night before the temple was to be dedicated, a huge storm hit that nation. And so as part of that, many villages were destroyed by that storm. And I had the opportunity to go into a village just a few days later. Many of those roads were blocked by water, and it took us a few days to get in. But I was with some local leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I had done some interviews and had the opportunity to sort of look down on that village. And I got to see what everyone was doing in response to that disaster. And there was a local Fijian stake president who had gathered a lot of the villagers and said, gather your materials, let's figure out how we're going to rebuild. And there's a missionary who was a welfare service humanitarian missionary for the church, and he was talking to the village chief, and he was saying, he needed to get stats so that church welfare could go in and help and serve those people who had been devastated. So he was asking, do you have clean water? Were your crops destroyed? How many people in this village died? How many homes need to be rebuilt? And what's the percentage of people who are members of this faith tradition as opposed to other faith groups? And let's figure out how we can help them all. And while that was going on, I observed the quiet ministry of the Relief Society leader who was with this little group that we were traveling with that day. And she was going door to door and ministering to people, and she had candy in her pocket for the children, and she was sharing her faith in a way that I thought was very, very special. It reminded me of reading the Bible and how the Savior ministered as far as teaching and taking care of the poor and needy and ministering to the one. And in that moment, it occurred to me that for me personally is what my ministry is like as a Latter-day Saint woman, that I get to do many of the things that the Savior did when he walked the earth. And so I shared that in that conference because that's what I think about when I think of being a woman in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I think of being a disciple of Jesus Christ.
Sara, it seems like churches in general and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in particular have recognized or maybe emphasized the role of women in the church today more than ever. And I think that the people that they reach out to have recognized that. And it just seems like this is a very good time for women in the church and in churches in general to speak out and talk about their experiences, what they're learning and what they're doing.
Yeah, let me tell you that really hit home for me. As a reporter for the Church News, I was covering the ministry of President Russell M. Nelson, and he was in Uruguay and had agreed to do an interview with Sergio Rabin. He is Pope Francis's biographer. And because this famous journalist was going to be interviewing President Nelson, I asked if I could sit in on that interview and listen. And in that interview, nothing was off the table. And so President Nelson was answering all kinds of questions about everything you can imagine. And at one point in the interview, Mr. Rabin said to President Nelson, a lot of churches have a reputation of being run by men at the exclusion of women. And you know what President Nelson said? You know what? I think we should let a woman answer that question. And he called on Sherry Dew, who was there in the room listening, and asked her to answer that question. So when I think of what it means to be a woman in our church, I think when given the chance to talk about women in the church, our prophet called on a woman to speak for herself.
Well said. Thank you for joining us this morning. We'll be right back.